and begin using intuition, discerning fact from fiction. Stop paying into our addiction of listening to a system that's turning us to victims of our lack of wisdom. If you don't see it now, it's okay to be confused. But don't throw rocks at those who do. Take a step back and you'll see who is piloting this ruse. A bunch of individuals profiting from your residuals, putting our money into propaganda and riot police instead of into our failing healthcare system. They've always done this. Tell us they need our money to fix the roads while they ride private jets and fancy boats. No wonder we can't stay afloat. We're right where they want us, distanced and thoughtless, avoiding each other so we can't discuss what's wrong with this picture. Instead, we discuss our feelings, caps lock on, with words vomiting out of our thumbs, without knowledge of real arguing. Why can't ideas be shared without ruining friendships and careers? Just because someone got offended, never learned emotional intelligence? Your feelings have no relevance in the crusade for truth. If they gave any credit to the people, we wouldn't have censored information. We get just one side on every station, pushing separation amongst each other. So we're too busy judging mothers who wonder why their kids are being smothered, masks in gym class. Call out the other when he pulls down his mask. How do they even learn in class? Ads selling problems, not solutions. Our institutions told us following was the solution. Because if you think for yourself, you'll go nowhere with an F. But I can tell you, the people who came out independent were the ones who were observant. I had to unlearn to become present, and I'm still working on it. But I make decisions for myself. This isn't about health. If it were, they'd tell us, get your vitamins, go for walks whenever you can. Do sports, eat well, have interactions, real human connections, raise your kids with healthy immune systems. Instead, they punish insurrections that fight for freedom from the infectious disease that is control. They swallow us whole, keep us indoors, special treatment for big box stores, give us fines when we're unsure what martial law is in place today, give us checks to stay on our good side, keep us lost and afraid because we can't afford a rising mortgage or rent because we lost our pay. It was never going to be just a few days.
Wow. I've been meaning to play that for a while. It's a bit long, but that's a poem. It's amazing.
Very
now, I'm just going to bring in a few guests, but the first off, before I do, I want to say I was watching the Ruckshan thing from home, and there was a bit of argy-barging, confusing things going on with the speeches, and then this one man sort of started speaking right into Ruckshan's video, and I sat up and thought, now who the hell is he? And because I never said who he was, and I took a picture with my phone, put it up on Facebook and said, does anyone know who this is? And this man knew who it was because it's him. And,
what a coincidence. Me.
David Franj. Yeah. And so David Franj has come on. David was incredibly articulate. And now also with us is Tania de Jong. And Tania de Jong is a singer, a soprano, and motivational speaker. And she's been contacting me and sending me lots of stuff about everything that's been going on too. And because they're both singers, I thought I'd get them on. So welcome to the show, guys.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah.
Yes, it is.
Can I start with David? What made you decide to go? Because as I was watching it, I was seeing you go to other cameras. I mean, basically anyone who was streaming, you were trying to have your say. And I was really interested in that. So what made you fire up to do it?
Well, the latter, I guess I understand the media, so I understand presence. So and hijacking a moment definitely when you need to. So look, such an open-ended question. I mean, if it wasn't what's been happening the last 2 years, I mean, I think a lot of us have been biting our tongue and waiting to see what happens. And I think enough became enough now with this new bill, and definitely a call to action. We're talking about giving complete power to a man who is notorious for abusing power to have the ultimate control over every individual's life. Where does the confusion lie with what he's attempting to do? The people that were out there Saturday seem to understand that and get the picture, but what's gone wrong in this transmission? What's happened? Why aren't people privy to this? Why aren't people waking up to this? He's just not also supremely arrogant, but extremely emboldened, and seems to be backed by a larger force. I mean, this is a megalomaniac. It's clear he's an unremarkable man. Yet even an unremarkable man, a bureaucrat, a maniacal bureaucrat, and a megalomaniac, to have the steam that he has, to have the momentum, the motivation he has, he's clearly got a fire under him. Where's this coming from? And we're talking about attacking democracy. This is an attack on our democracy. This is going against the Magna Carta, the Westminster Rule of Law. I'm speechless. I mean, speechless is an understatement. This is just completely bizarre. And I mean, even for the mainstream media to not be covering this, it really shows some kind of deep state complicity, because we're talking, as I said, we're talking about restructuring the Westminster Rule of Law, our democracy, 500 years of rule. We're talking about serfdom. We're talking about the laws that have protected us against totalitarian rule, against tyrannical law of the elites. And I'm just confused. I'm just puzzled as to why people say it was a great turnout yesterday. I'm puzzled as to why 6 million people weren't there, given
every single Victorian.
Yeah.
I'm surprised people didn't come in from out of state. I mean, this is a stepping stone. If you can pass this, we've already passed laws that see people are gladly injecting them. So each to their own. That's their body. That's their choice. But if you can force people, mandate medical apartheid, there's pretty much nothing you can't do. But now we've jumped. We're jumping another shark now. We're talking about democracy. We're the first Western police state in the world. Why isn't anybody reporting that? Like, I mean, we've become a Western police state. That's unprecedented. 500 years. This is the first Western police state in 500 years. Democracy fell in Australia and Victoria. We just made history for all the wrong reasons. We can't even report the fact that we've made history for all the wrong reasons. I thought they'd be proud of that.
And it fell with a whisper.
Proud of that.
Before we go on, sorry to not get in, but I might bring Tania in. So Tania, you approached me too, and you've been really fired up. And are you fired up for the same reasons? Because I've been getting all your emails. In fact, the last one that got me so angry. It was from that medical health guy in Queensland who wanted to basically saying the unvaccinated are going to have lonely, horrible lives. I just wanted to punch him in the face, to be honest. So, I didn't even want to, But how about you, Tania? How did it finally get under your skin?
Oh, look, it's been getting under my skin since the beginning, really. And, it's interesting, being on a podcast with fellow artists and creative people, because I think that the creative sector and artists and people in events and the whole tourism sector has been so decimated and destroyed by what's happened. And it's the level of suffering that I see is just, it's really heartbreaking. Like, my heart goes out all the time to the people who are suffering. I mean, just this morning on LinkedIn, I had a lot of messages. One of them was from a lady who, is quite disadvantaged in Newcastle, but, is standing strong. But she, her little sister just, jumped off a cliff 2 days ago, and she just doesn't know what to do. And then another guy who's a healthcare worker in Melbourne who was stood down because of his position, and he was pretty strong, but now he's just feeling really depressed, and he said he doesn't know how to go on. And I've just because as well as being a performer, I also run 2 mental health charities, Mind Medicine
Oh, wow.
Australia and Creativity Australia in the With One Voice program. And we're not helplines, but it feels like we are, because the calls for help are just so many. Like, we're probably getting 20 to 30 emails, messages a day from people who are at their wits' end. They've tried to overdose. They don't feel there's any hope, that there's no point going on. And that just breaks my heart. So I feel that, all of us have to stand up for the people who are vulnerable in our communities.
Tanya, sorry to you say it's absolute abandonment, isn't it?
It's total abandonment. Yeah, because, these people are relying on the system, because that's all they've known. And when the system breaks down or becomes something different, then all of a sudden they can't rely on that anymore. And really the mistake that, I suppose we've all made is, well, many of us have made at some level, is we've thought that our institutions were trustworthy. And we've put our faith...
At least one of them. They've all gone.
Yeah.
Like one we can rely on.
This is the first time we've truly been tested as a nation. We've actually been tested as a whole, as an entire nation, as people simultaneously. This is the first real test, and I think we failed up until now. And it's easy to, it's easy to be reductionist,
including the charities and the philanthropic
abandonment, debts from abandonment. I mean, what are the figures on debts from abandonment of the elderly, the most vulnerable? So many debts are covered up.
Yeah. No one's speaking about that. I mean, just a couple of weeks ago, there was an article in the Australian which said that 4 out of 5 Australians are experiencing much worse mental health over this last 18 months. But really, the governments tokenistically say, we're helping fund more mental health, support. But in actual fact, nothing's really being done.
And paint a picture. Look at it. Try to see it. And an overview of the elderly, for example. Think about age playing a factor, strength, access to technology, ability to use technology. I mean, a young person could say, well, I'm feeling seedy today. I'm just going to order some antibiotics, or I'm going to order in some takeout. I mean, old people don't have that. And in this case, they don't have their family. They don't have services. So death by abandonment, I've looked at some statistics, some numbers. Loneliness, but actual abandonment, physical abandonment, and they've not been able to fend for themselves. And who's been there? So if they've been protected by this virus, well, look, I do believe in the virus. Well, they've been protected, but we've cut off our nose to spite our face, because in protecting them from the virus, they've died from abandonment, starvation, literally starvation. People have not known what's going on, how to fend and manage them for themselves. Because we're talking about 70, 80-year-old people, fatigue, mental health conditions, general pre-existing conditions. So we've exacerbated that. And if the virus didn't kill them, our government has certainly just thrown them, just hasn't nudged them over the edge. I mean, it really just the edge from under.
It's almost a war on the most fundamental thing of humanity, isn't it? Which is love. It's a war on love. So you let these old people lie with their own degenerative illnesses getting worse in loneliness.
So, David,
and that's where we have to go to.
We've got a little bit of trouble with your sound. Can we get you to log in and log out and log back in to see if we can fix it? It's breaking up.
Is that me or David?
No, David. It's just breaking up a bit. Just
breaking up a lot.
Yeah, breaking up a lot. You just said some really great stuff.
Now you've come off mic a little bit, Michael, too. Just wait. Just now. You weren't before, but now it's gone.
Is that any better before I log off?
That sounds better.
Is that any better? Yep. How's that? Testing 1, 2, 3. Sorry to be doing this to all of you.
Little break.
Any good?
You're mute, Michael. Can't hear you at all. You're mute, mate.
How's that? Better?
Yeah, spot on. Bang on. Yep. Back.
Okay. There's do you notice, Tanya, are you surprised by the cruelty that's going on? I mean, There is just complete intolerance of people now, and basically the only kindness is basically just comply. Comply, taking over kindness, and families. Like even today, I had a woman tell me that her sisters have not invited her to birthday parties of her nieces and stuff because she's not vaccinated. I mean, it's just families cutting people out because of choices, and that's working on a family level and then all the way up. I mean, we've had women on this show who were homeless support workers for the Salvation Army. Gone. You know, you're not vaccinated, gone. People can't be man the phones at Lifeline because they're not vaccinated. So even though they're desperate to have people on their phones, they're getting rid of them. So we're going to be losing people to suicide.
And they're working from home.
Can I just ask a really naive question? Sorry.
Yeah, sure.
What do we benefit out of being a two-tier society?
No, nothing. I don't see any benefit.
Sorry, David, I was just going to answer a question there. No, just going back to the cruelty. I mean, I think it's been there from the beginning of this pandemic. I mean, it's been shocking to see, what's happened in some of the, the border stuff that happened right from the beginning, where people were preventing sick people from getting medical care, where people couldn't see their loved ones in their final days. I mean, the cruelty has been profound, and it does truly would have to make anyone question the moral compass of anyone who's doing this. Like, I mean, what has happened to our hearts? What has happened to our spirits? Like, and to your point, Damien, I mean, love needs to overcome the fear. So whatever, fear we're all feeling or have felt, now we have to go to a much higher space of love to start reaching out our hands and seeing that all of our brothers and sisters are awake or asleep. We need to bridge the divide between us all.
Tania, could I ask on top of that, hang on, I just want to say, so say we're in this perfect world and we brought those perpetrators to justice, how would we then continue to show love in that circumstance?
Well, it's a really difficult one. I'm the daughter and granddaughter of Holocaust survivors. So it's hard, obviously I don't feel love towards the perpetrators of people who killed pretty much all my relatives. But you have to come to terms with that. And at some point, you as an individual have to forgive, because if we don't forgive, we can never heal and we can never move forward. So
they hanged a lot of the perpetrators, didn't they, at the Nuremberg trials?
Nuremberg trials, yeah.
That's right.
And Hannah Arendt put it perfectly, a fantastic Jewish writer, philosopher, in The Banality of Evil. And Victoria, Melbourne, Australia, Western culture is really really playing out a lot of what was captured, a lot of those lessons that should never be repeated. We're mirroring now, and on Tania's point, absolutely we need to find the higher love. What scares me at the moment is people can't even seem to find basic love. We that's become so attainable. And I mean, I'm all for the higher love, but I'm like, geez, I mean, we've abandoned just basic decency. Basic decency is gone. Let's start with that. There's something really wrong when we don't even have that in our repertoire anymore.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm shocked. It's really difficult putting words together because it's unprecedented. I mean, I've never seen this much callousness in my life. You really have to look back at history and know your history and say, I mean, this has only ever happened in the worst moments in history, in those worst turning points, crossroads in history.
That's where we are. That's where we are. That's where we are, right?
Absolutely.
And our premiers are just pushing it. I mean, I saw Koshi was interviewing, I don't watch any of that stuff much, but someone sent me a video of it, and Koshi is going, well, us vaccinated people have just got to tell the unvaccinated people we don't want you in our lives anymore. You're in a position of power and you're spreading division. You're going against everything that our
He's
culture
following
stands
script.
for.
No, he's
That's
following
right. And the Premier is just sitting there going, yes, yes, you said it, and I'm
No,
nodding.
Daniel Andrews is an advocate of the CCP. I mean, Daniel Andrews, let's look at China. Let's look at the internment camps in China that have been there for 10 years. This is just an extension of that. He's an agent, and he's an agent provocateur. And he's here and he's saying, well, I'm an advocate of China. I support these camps, these re-education camps, and this social rating and classing system. And Koshi's behind it. All these guys, they don't see an issue with it, and they're going with the status quo, and that's what it is at the moment. I mean, this is what Daniel Andrews wants to get over the line. He wants to get into a social ordering system akin to China, if not a mirror image of China. This is why we have re-education programs. This is why our commercial media is all about re-indoctrination, reinventing language.
Yeah.
So you're both artists, and Michael and I like to know what happens with artists because we've struggled with our own community's silence in the face of this absolute evil. So at what point did both of you decide, no, now's the time I'm going to speak up, and what's the reception been like from your colleagues?
Tanya.
Well,
Before you, David, can I get you just to face your laptop? That might be a bit of the sound.
Oh, sorry.
A small microphone. It might actually
I'm so
be
vain. I just keep looking at myself. I'm terribly vain. It's the Italian in me. Sorry.
Well, that's not the only reason I have the show. I just sit here and look at myself for an hour.
The swarthy Mediterranean good looks.
Like the quarter of that, I look at David.
Still got a
not
black
at all.
beard as well. Look at us, old graying.
No, I've got some cheat notes in front of me. That was the real reason.
Sorry, Tanya. Go ahead, please.
Tanya.
no, I was just going to say, like, I think it's very difficult for a lot of artists because, you know, artists of their nature have had a hard existence from the beginning. You know, we've always fought to be properly recognised, to earn a living from what we do, and, you know, that people think, oh, we're just doing things that we do for fun, and somehow that we can keep a roof over our head and food on our table. And so I think a lot of artists, you know, have learnt to play the game and just to, you know, take a lot of rubbish, really. And then on the other hand, there's always been artists who have spoken out. And also, you know, there are some wonderful artists in Australia who are speaking out strongly about freedom and about truth. People like Friends of Truth. That's echoing very strangely, but
It is, yeah.
hopefully you
I
can hear it. It's not anything I'm doing, I don't think, but, you know, there's a one-side Telegram channel, Friends of Truth, which is a musician in Sydney who's been amassing a lot of fellow musicians to really speak about truth and inclusion and freedom. And really, at the end of the day, that's what we need as artists, I think, to stand for. Like, you know, otherwise we might as well be in prison. There will be no space to create anymore.
Well, where's the big mega voices like Kate Blanchett or Russell Crowe? You know, someone, you know what I mean? Someone who's really could
They don't want
reverberate
to
through
their
the
relationship with the Chinese corporate dollar. That's easy money. Chinese Asian money, Asian market is very easy money. Campaigns in and out $1 million a day for a small spot and appearance, and you don't want to alienate that market. Big Hollywood studios. It really runs deep. That's my experience. It's so much conflict of interest, and they're very selective with their causes. Once there's already a bandwagon, if it doesn't work against them, they're all in. I mean, the industry is a cancel culture. It's Fabian. It's left, notoriously left wing. We're not talking about the 40s and 50s anymore, where we have American studios and the US government consorting with screenplay writers and sending out that old school type of propaganda. We have a left wing propaganda. We have social media magnates. It's a giant conglomerate, and it's all tied in. So as long as the cause is safe, and they play it up, it's like they're going out on a limb. They're never going out on a limb. I mean, how many people really despise the trans community? Not many. People are sympathetic towards LGBTQ communities and the rest. So you're not very brave speaking out for those communities because there's generally love for those people.
Do you remember when they had those girls kidnapped in Kenya and everyone held up signs, let the girls free, and everybody, because it's safe to do it because everyone's doing it.
Boko Haram, I think, took them. Boko Haram. Yeah.
Where here in Australia, it's very dangerous to do it as an artist. And in fact,
well, I did notice that Keanu. Oh, I noticed a couple of, Keanu Reeves and Mel Gibson and a few of those people are certainly speaking out. And then you've got people like, Joe Rogan. Not that he's necessarily an artist, but you've certainly
Russell
got
Brand. Someone wrote in the comments. Russell Brand.
Yeah, Russell Brand. Yeah.
Russell's been doing it for a while.
He red pilled it quite a long time ago. He did.
You're right.
Yeah. But there's, it is interesting. Though I do think, though, that there's, and this is going to get me a lot of crap. I think there's two sorts of artists. There's the ones that just want to entertain, and they're not political. So all they want to do is get on a stage and entertain and make a living entertaining, however they do it. If they're acting, they just want to act, and they're not political, and so they just want to. And I get it. So they're entertainers, and then there's other artists who are trying to document their time in some way, and been holding up a mirror to the society they're in to say, this is where we are. Is this, and they're rarer, and they can't stay silent because it goes against the very nature of their destiny. And I think that's what's happening. I've seen it. Damien couldn't shut him up. He just couldn't do it. So what I mean? I've seen him there. He gets fired up and he believes passionately on it. And you're thinking to yourself, well, don't you want an artist like that in society? Aren't you glad you've actually got artists that are actually going to go up and try to document what's happening and challenge it?
And that's how you make good art as well. You make good art from actually being thoughtful and having controversy and, disagreement and so on, not from all thinking the same thoughts all the time, being silenced. Actually, if you look at it though, Australia has had a huge focus on, equal opportunity, on, non-discrimination, on diversity and inclusion, all these sorts of things, have been at the forefront for certainly the last 2 or 3 decades and becoming more strong. And then all of a sudden now we're, becoming discriminating, we're dehumanizing, demonizing. It's like we're destroying everything that we stand for or stood for, just like that.
I think it's quite disappointing. I think it always has been very disappointing. And we've apexed now that people are looking at that community for answers. They're entertainers. We're entertainers. We may have an opinion, and I'm speak for myself. I'll definitely speak for those who are out of their depths. I will critique that and criticize that because you're an entertainer. You play a character, and whatever it is you do. But look, stay in your lane. Absolutely, stay in your lane. So but more so, stop looking to these people because you see them on the screen and you're besotted by them. Stop looking to them for answers. They don't have the answers. You have the answer. Tania, people like people that are getting with it have the answer. Michael, you have the answer. Damien, you have the answer. I mean, parts of it. We're coming together. This is what it is. It's those that are proactive, not those that are playing a role of being proactive, or we're waiting with bated breath for their opinion and their next tweet and their next Instagram post to see what side of the fence they're on or what awakening they've had on the day. I mean, your awakening is personal, it's private, it's completely subjective, and should represent what you want, where you want to go, and benevolence and goodness and decency, not not virtue signaling, which is what it all is. You have to understand when something reaches us, even if it's going through Twitter or any kind of feed or Instagram feed from these celebrities, it goes to a filter. It goes to a process. Their agents overlook and read everything. This is all premeditated. It's all structured and strategy. They know exactly what they're going to say and who they're trying to lure in, and they're measuring it. They're measuring all their opinions. And at the moment, they're hedging their bets. They're cowards. They're rubbish for the most part. And they're climbers. They're social climbers. They're status climbers. They're disgusting. You know, they really, really are. So we have to stop looking. Well, not
so
we,
David,
I
how do your
don't.
colleagues deal with this sort of?
I'm
how are you talking
cancelled.
now?
I
How
was
do you?
cancelled a long time ago. I'm cancelled. I mean,
That's-
I was cancelled ages ago. I don't fit the narrative. I never did before all this crap went down. I'm well dressed. I'm conservative. I'm fat. Like I present as a fascist, don't I? Even though I despise fascism, but I present as one, don't I? Because I like good food and I support values and I speak out of morality. And there's God. I name drop God in a few of my songs. In most of my songs, there's a spiritual message. They're not a light FM extreme of a spiritual message. I'm not a church-going Christian or anything, but I'm a spiritual person. It's personal, and but that was enough to get me cancelled. I mean, "Perfect" was one of the most played songs in Australian history, which I wrote, and then Vanessa came along and added her little bit to it and got the co-write, whatever, and that was the most played song on radio. It broke records in like 2 years, broke all kinds of Australian records. And if that were Jimmy Barnes, and I'm not speaking out against that, but it's just David Franj here from Preston, you know, so you don't want to give him a podium.
Congratulations on writing that.
We don't want to destroy. We don't want to
You just
destroy
outed
that.
yourself as being in Preston. We're
Yeah,
narrowing it down.
I'm in Communistville here, but
I just
I'm
heard the helicopter turn direction overhead and go, oh, it's impressive.
it's constantly there. It's constantly.
It's close to us.
So you know, and so I anything that ruins that legacy of Barnes or questions that legacy of Jimmy Barnes or Powderfinger, all that stuff. So we you know, management and publishers at the time have to make a big stink about it and mention the accolades and write to the media, mention the figures and the numbers and the stats that we were breaking, because nobody was paying attention to this WOG. You know, I'm a second-rate citizen. I'm an Australian. I should just be grateful my parents escaped here after the war. My parents were in an internment camp, a similar history to possibly to Tania's family, fled Europe, fled persecution. My family was the stories, you know, and yet because I choose to dress well, you can insult me and call me a fascist, even though my family fought fascism and were killed fighting fascism. But I like a good bowl of pasta and a candelabra in my on my desk, and I'm Mussolini all of a sudden.
Well, I have to admit, out of all the people we've had on the show, you're the best dressed, closest to a fascist that we've had. Usually they're pretty scruffy that come on. So
you've got a mesmerising rhetoric like Mussolini as well. So maybe that's, you know.
I disagree. I think Tania,
when you said when your family are from, we're in the camps. So De Jong doesn't sound Jewish, is it? But there's Jewish people in your past?
So my dad was Dutch, and so he was actually sheltered by Catholic families during the Holocaust, moved from house to house, and incredibly frightening. I mean, he was a little boy at the time. He never really spoke about it till about the last 2 or 3 years of his life, and he had false papers, and you know, his parents were working in the underground, the resistance, trying to protect the little kids. And of course, the Catholic families who were housing these little children, they were risking their lives.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
So, you know,
and doing it, why? Out of decency, out of human kindness.
Absolutely, out of human decency and love.
And that's
why
they grew up together. Neighbours. Neighbours. They ate together. They babysat each other's children. It takes a village to raise a child.
They didn't all dob on each other, David.
That's
totally. Well, you know, there were the dobbers and then there were the protectors, you know, and
exactly.
So,
precisely why a lot of my family were put in camps, because they were protecting. Anyway, look, that's another subject, but it takes a village to raise a family. Religion wasn't a factor back then.
Let Tania finish. I think Tania was going to.
Yeah, well, let's just let Tania finish for a sec. But go on, Tania, just where you're finishing about honey.
No, I was just going to say, and my mum was born in Vienna, and my grandparents, her parents had come from Poland, and my grandmother actually invented the foldable umbrella in 1929 in Vienna, and it was manufactured for 10 years in the Austrian factory. It's still manufactured in that Austrian factory, but they managed to bribe their way out of Vienna. They could see what was happening, And so my grandfather, who was a very famous sculptor, sculpted a border guard's bust. And they got 3 passages out. My mum was 3 months old at the time with her parents. The rest of our relatives were not so lucky, but my grandmother was then approached by the German authorities to sell her royalties, but she did a deal where she did keep the actual patent.
I was going to ask you that. I was going to ask you about the patent if it reverted back to you because the Nazis would have stolen it. Or the government.
The reason I have to work today is because we didn't keep the royalties, but she did actually keep the patent. So in the European Patent Office, if you look up Slava Horowitz, you'll see my grandmother as the original inventor of the foldable umbrella.
That's criminal. The theft of intellectual property. It's not just a financial thing; it's crushing because it's this woman's gone out there and actually contributed. I mean, it's intellectual property. Theft of intellectual property.
Also in a time where women were second-class citizens as well. So to actually come up and be the inventor.
No, that was extraordinary. I mean, she was a trailblazer
as well.
Yeah, she was in the news headlines. The amazing umbrella of the sculptress. She was a sculptress and artist as well.
The state will dominate, won't it? The state will dominate.
Sorry.
Well, the state's declared war on ingenuity, hasn't it? Human ingenuity. It's been declared war on it. The state will dominate. The state will own everything. There will be no human ingenuity. Yeah. The middle class will be destroyed. Yeah.
Well, if you look at China, for example, as we all know, when the Communist Party came in, then of course all the songs that were sung had to be particular types of songs. There was no creativity remaining. So, yeah, I mean, that's not a life for any human being, because actually at the end of the day, we're all creatives on this call, but actually all human beings are creative. So, it's pretty sad when your voice is stifled, your creative voice.
There's a comment here, David, aimed at you. It says, great work, David, with the jerk from Channel 7 and his bodyguard on Saturday. Can you fill it in? Something about that?
It's better, rather than waste time with an anecdote, it's probably better not to just plug Cossack. I think he does great stuff, but it's on the Aussie Cossack, and he was basically, doing what commercial media do. He was out of the action, and he's basically just trying to bait. They're walking tragedies, unfortunately, so they can interview them, and that can be the reflection and the sound bite and the picture bite and the comp for the nightly news. So people were challenging him, and so rather than they use their current affair tactics of just chasing people down and getting in your face, and we kind of turned it on them. So you have to see it. It was quite good. I was tempted. I was tempted with Stephen from the Cossack channel to. He was really good. I mean, he pushed it. He really pushed it, and I was kind of playing he was a bad cop, and I was a not so bad cop. But it was fun. It was good. It's good to see those guys being challenged to be held to be accountable, because nobody's there questioning their integrity. You see, they've got all the power, this carte blanche, to challenge everybody else's integrity, but who's there challenging their integrity? Like they've got this about patents, as if they've got this patent on integrity.
Yeah.
Is that why they interviewed me? Because they knew I was enough?
Yeah. Has he managed to get the pizza out of his suit yet? Because that's the CMFEU. He got covered in pizza.
Really? Well, unfortunately, there was no pizza yesterday, because I would have just grabbed the slice. But no.
Paul from Channel 7. Mm.
Yeah. It's now, can we see, where do you think the direction is going? That's the one reason I brought David on. But I'll start with Tania. Where do you see us going, and how are you dealing? I'm just going to take a punt that you're not vaccinated. How are you going with cafes and restaurants that won't let you in and stuff like that? This apartheid system.
Yeah, so I think the most important thing really is for us all to work against the apartheid system, because there's no justification for it, and we need to have a united society. So we need to do everything that we can to ensure that people understand that whether people are vaccinated or not is actually not the issue. It's what kind of society we want to have, and what kind of society we want to have for our children and grandchildren. And by the way, all the politicians, the bureaucrats, the media, all these people who are not speaking out against these abuses of human rights, they all have children and grandchildren. And I can't believe that in their hearts they're not concerned. You know, you can compartmentalize so much when you're doing a job, but I can't believe that they wouldn't be worried for their own families and for their own children, because it doesn't matter, like, whether you're vaccinated or not vaccinated. Who wants to live in a world where people are dobbing on each other, trying to, you know, demonize, dehumanize, segregate, divide? Who wants to live in that sort of world? That is not a healthy upbringing for any human being.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I totally agree. There's
They
even
can profit from it, don't they? They think they can profit from it. Surely they assume that they can profit from staying inside the system. They can play it.
I just don't see how. And I mean, like, also in terms of businesses and others, I mean, they don't profit from it for sure, because
no, I mean, November the 24th, the vaccinated aren't even allowed to go shopping. So you've got Christmas coming up, and suddenly the unvaccinated won't be allowed to shop. So even if it was, say, everybody was at the march, there you've got, say, 70, 80, 100,000. And so who knows, because they're lying about the figures, so no one knows. And they're not going to be able to go shopping for Christmas. And so the retailers are going to be missing out on that.
Well, that's why they've squeezed it in now. They've squeezed it in now.
But I also, that just makes absolutely no sense. Pardon?
There's a reason why it's called a global reset. This isn't just a buzzword. It's been it's been fed to us, and it's been it was introduced and slow. It was dropped into everything. And in the beginning, people were like, I don't know if people were questioning it and saying, this is pretty bizarre. Global reset? What's that got to do with a virus? Global reset, reset. And it just became part of the vernacular, part of the vocabulary. It just in the lexicon now. Global reset, and your freedom. Your freedom, no longer your freedom. You're no longer freedom, your freedom. We're trying to work out what that schedule in your freedom. Like, are you kidding me? I mean, what planet have I landed on? When I feel like I went to sleep and I was body snatched.
But David, we just need to disrupt the reset, don't we? We're creative.
Absolutely.
Let's just disrupt the reset.
How do we do that? How do we do that?
We need to pull it out and say, hang on a second. You want to talk about all these? You want to start censoring words and phrases and so on and so forth. You want to be language regulators and phrase regulators. Well, how about we start taking control and start banning words like phrases like global reset and your freedom and political correctness and political apartheid and vaccinated and unvaccinated. How about we just one?
And anti-vax. I mean, what about that terrible word? We are one. Exactly. We are brothers and sisters. All of us.
Because we don't control the narrative. We don't control the apparatus of the narrative.
How about rather than dumbing ourselves down to fit in with a collective, we work a bit harder to be intellectualized and stand out individually for the right reasons. Instead of being lazy and not doing the work and saying, I'm going to be part of the status quo, who are a bunch of just indoctrinated zombies, how about doing a bit of character building and being an individual? Maybe you'll fight for those rights. I see very weak people at the moment, really, really weak people sitting on their laurels that are happy to go along with all of this because it doesn't demand anything from you. There's one man who wants to control the state, who's been controlling the state, and it's a system they're setting up everywhere, like Trudeau in Canada, where people no longer have to think. And unfortunately, there's people that were really good at that before all of this happened, so they're happy to go along with it.
Well, it's interesting, you know, like the way one of the interesting things that happened first was the censoring of social media. I mean, basically, you couldn't question the narrative at all. You were getting banned. And all the people that were supporters of me were going, I'm in jail again. I don't even know what I did. You know, someone put up Kill the Bill and got a month in the Facebook jail. So out there in the public, the people who are sitting home isolated are looking at the TV, and they get one narrative there. Then they got on social media, and the only ones who are allowed to speak are the ones who are pro the narrative.
It's very important.
So what I noticed when I was first going to the marches, people were coming up to me and hugging and crying because they felt so lonely. Because they said, this is how I felt, but until I came to this march and saw that there's all these like-minded people, I felt completely isolated and alone. And I think that's worn people down, and that's been on purpose.
Sorry to
Absolutely.
really, I'm going to make this really, really quickly. But to answer that, Michael, this is what is so frightening about this bill, because we're talking about Facebook jail. Yeah. I mean, if this law passes, if this goes through, this person has the power. This person has the power over your body,
Yeah.
not your Facebook account, your body. Yeah. You could be Section 8. I mean, if you speak out against this person who is notorious for not wanting to be spoken out against and questioned, just as they do in China, you can be placed in a camp. This is how real this is. It's real jail. We're saying goodbye to freedom. We're saying one guy can decide whether you're mentally competent or not based on whether he likes your character, how he measures your character with his Stasi police and as Tania would understand, Joseph Mengele style medical team.
Yeah. And I was sent an email, did you see those PSOs who went to the doctor and got his medical records? They went in, they didn't have a warrant, they just went in. Well, apparently they've been training all of those secretly, and no one knows what they're being trained into, and they believe they're training to come and get us if we're a dissident. So you can come in, they don't need a warrant, they got the police that'll be there with them. And I've been telling people what they'll do is they'll do what they do in history. They'll do it in the middle of the night, one, to make sure you're there, and two, to make sure it happens so quickly that your neighbours won't be able to do anything, because you're not going to take on the establishment if you've got police everywhere in your pajamas. Then they'll take you away to one of these camps. It's 2 years. 2 years. They don't need a trial. And then you have no right of recall or whatever. Or the only thing you can do is once a day you can write a letter to your warden. This is in the bill. Write a letter to your warden, and if he sees the letter as worthy enough, he can pass it on to the chief medical health officer. Maybe they'll let you out. But otherwise, you're there for at least 2 years. And then when they let you out, if they've discovered that they should never put you there in the first place, there's nothing you can do about it. And you still have to pay the bill. And you have to pay for the whole time you were incarcerated. I mean, this is just bonkers stuff. It's just evil and bonkers together. You know what I mean? It's
but this is,
and they're building this camp like crazy. 24 hours, 24/7. They're working on it. They'll have the first 500 places ready soon, and then 1,000 by March, 2,000 that's in Mickleham, and I believe there's other ones going up. But it's
well, we should have a great concert in there, shouldn't we?
Yeah.
I always say if they don't cut our tongues out.
What if they don't have? Why don't we have 24 million people on the street right now? I mean,
what sort of society just sits there quietly while they build a camp for anybody that's going to question the narrative, and just sits there quietly watching it? I mean, it's like chickens sitting there watching the farmer sharpen an axe, and some chickens going, "Shouldn't we do something?"
Not unprecedented and happening in China at the moment. But we've made history, as I said, for all the wrong reasons, because we are now the first Western police state, and we're about to head into internment camps and re-education camps, if not worse, labour camps and death camps. Who knows? Who knows? And I said, this isn't a bunch of conspiracy theorists sitting around. It's why 100,000 people were on the street yesterday, because they're awake to it.
Yeah. Can I ask you both a question? One of the things that first came out, because the thing that got me worried was the erosion of our freedoms. But people were going, "Oh, you've never been free. It's illusion. You never had freedom." But I actually thought we did. And then the other thing they were saying was, "I don't mind giving away a bit of my freedoms because, when everything's good, the government will give it back." But what are your views of freedom? What are your views of what you thought were our fundamental freedoms that we were given from birth?
Feel free, Tania. Sorry, ladies first.
I mean, these are inalienable rights as human beings. So, we can't have them taken away. It's unlawful to do so. We are supposed to be in a democracy, and if Australia is not a democracy anymore, then the politicians should be telling us that, and we should all decide what we want to do about that. You know, I know a lot of people who are leaving Australia, and certainly I know a lot of people who are leaving Victoria or have left. I'm sure you all do as well. And, you know, we will just have to leave. There is no other real option. I mean, who would want to stay in a place that is no longer what it's, you know, what we came here for? I mean, my parents and grandparents escaped, you know, evil regimes, and, you know, and we're blessed to live in this country up until the last couple of years. And I think we all felt that this was a beautiful nation. You know, sure, it's got its issues. It's always had its issues. But at the end of the day, it was truly a free place, you know, and we were free to be ourselves, free to create, free to be with whomever we wanted, and freely made our choices, and we had freedom of speech.
We're all Aboriginals now. We're all Aboriginals now, Tania.
Right, yeah.
But can I say, where would you flee to, Tania? This is the problem, because it's not just rolling out in Victoria, Australia, because if it is,
well, you know,
everyone's going to flee.
There are other countries in the world that are not part of this. And
Afghanistan?
So, yeah, I mean...
Well, the third world, I hear, because the third world can't afford to enforce it. So but seriously, Tania, where would you go? I'm interested.
I guess, I mean, you know, I have been thinking about that.
You might want to say, so tell us some of the options that you haven't chosen, if you know what I mean. Some that were in the ballpark.
I mean, there are countries in Europe like Portugal that are much more liberal. You know, there's some countries also in Asia that are more liberal, and the Pacific as well. And yeah, I mean, you know,
interesting to think though that these countries might actually be suddenly have an influx of refugees, and the refugees are from the Western world, like they're from England and Australia, and suddenly going, hey guys, we can't take you in. We've got 1 million people trying to get into live in our country.
Fiji.
Yeah, Fiji. Just to
are now returning, you know, a re-exodus.
Yeah. And by the way, I think someone said, I live off the taxpayer. I think there was a comment I just saw about that. That is entirely not the case at all. I donate my time, I contribute my time to charities free of charge, so I don't live off the taxpayer. I pay a lot of tax though.
I couldn't care if you didn't. Your grandmother invented the fold-up umbrella. You've got to pass.
It's a good criticism to make of artists in general, isn't it? We're mendicants of the state, and that's why we have to comply as well, because we need funding, we need that money. So we so often become just mendicants of whatever the state tells us to do and whatever it is that we.
Yes, but the point is, we are taxpayers, and they serve us. We need to remember that.
Just to finish there, Tania, because
they serve us. And if they don't serve us properly,
but before this all started, I was living as a playwright, but I'd been writing plays for a long time, but I never actually called myself a playwright until I was living off the plays. And then once I was living off them, I wasn't on the dole, I was actually living off the art. Then I felt I had the right to call myself what I was, because that was my income. And so I just wanted to earn the accolade. I just wanted to actually earn the bastion. And so, so I wasn't living off anything at all. I was just living off my art before it came. So, and any grants that I came later down the track, because people suddenly realized I was having some success. Let's back the horse. But before then, it was actually just customers selling tickets, you know. Now, David, yourself, what about you? You're a big advocate for freedom. What do you think? What was free? It's just to identify the problem. If we're losing it, what was it we're actually losing in your estimations?
What a surreal conversation to be having.
Yeah, I can't believe you have to have it, because
in all seriousness,
I know. It's like I feel like I've landed on another planet that I actually have to construct the response. I have to really construct the response here, and I have to. I mean, and then also has to be summarized and brevity as well. We need to. It's so open-ended. I mean, look, freedom. We never really had it, no, but it's clearly much better than where we are now. You don't lose it overnight, which is now clear also. It wasn't something that just happened. For those that had their head in the sand, absolutely. For those who still have their head in the sand and don't realize what's going on, it's going to be a real shock when the bill passes, because I have just a terrible feeling that it just might. I think it's the head of the snake, head of the fish, and follow the head of the snake. Does it go up to Morrison? Is this something that's coming? Is this a globalist agenda? How deep is Morrison into this? The pharmaceuticals are in his pocket. He's got him, but is he on this totalitarian train is he on the same script with Daniel Andrews when it comes to the reset and the social classing and the social ordering system? So I don't know how deep this goes. The fact that we've arrived at this point and we're having this conversation is nightmarish. It shouldn't have happened. As I keep saying, who would have thought we would be discussing these things? The fact that we can live in a country with the Magna Carta, with Westminster rule, as I said right at the beginning of the little cast here, the fact that somebody can even propose what this maniacal sociopath proposed, that in itself, I mean, that should call for immediate treason charge. To just propose that, I mean, it goes against the fabric of this society and what it's built on. We have constitution built of hundreds of years to protect us from exactly that, which has now become acceptable to say overnight. Why? Because of our affiliation with China, because of his affiliation with China, with globalist order. How deep does this go? The rabbit hole. Where is this coming from? As I said before, who is backing this guy? Who is emboldening this really unremarkable character? This man has nothing about him, no charm, no charisma, no integrity, no compassion. He's an absolute strikeout. He's an X. He ticks X in every box. So what is behind this very ordinary, unremarkable person who only has the ability, not the skill, not the talent, only ability is to attack every problem as if it were a nail and he's a hammer, to attack everything. His skill is to apply the same force as the worst dictators have throughout history. That's his only skill. They obviously scouted that. Like Tanya and I know how the industry, music industry work. They scout for different reasons. These guys really know how to recruit maniacs because they got it right with Andrews. This is how far back does this go? It's a Manchurian candidate. I mean, what are we dealing with here? This guy he might play the dunce or he might come. I mean, but one thing, he's a proficient and efficient maniacal dictator. I mean, you could easily transfer him to Hong Kong after this. China could relocate him and say, "You're on the books, buddy, governor of Hong Kong. Actually, come over here, Shanghai province. Run the camps here." Does anybody have any qualms that he wouldn't do a great job over there? Am I off mark here?
Cometh the man, cometh the hour.
Yeah, that's right. I think one of the interesting things too now, but Bert Newton's funeral is a red flag because basically now it's supposed to be everybody's equal, but some are more equal than others. And basically now Bert Newton and the elite want to have a funeral. They have 500 people there. But if you lose your father, you're allowed maybe 20, and they've got to be vaccinated or 10 unvaccinated.
Michael Gadinsky, a notorious cocaine abuser, God rest his soul, it's between him and God, got nothing to do with me. I'm not judging, but we all know what Michael Gadinsky was, what he got away with. The guy had immunity. The guy had immunity from every Victorian government, dies of an illicit drug overdose with some prescription drugs mixed in, and he has a state funeral. Where are the nurses? Where are the doctors? Where are the scientists? Where are the lifesavers? Where are those that foster and adopt? Where are those that are going out there breaking COVID restriction rules to feed the elderly, to make sure the elderly don't degenerate and die? There's no state funeral for those. There's an internment camp. and $15,000 fines for those people, cocaine addict who dies from an illicit drug overdose, a party boy, a notorious party boy, state funeral. There's Australia in a nutshell.
Yeah, that's right. That's where we are now. And I think that's one of the ways of fixing it, is to continually identify it, is to hold up a mirror and go, this is where we are now. There's complete inequity. There's hypocrisy. There's just outright lying. And this is where we are. Even like they're pushing this other protest group who's anti-fascist, anti-racist, which is aimed at the people who are at the march. And it's amazing. They're going, oh, they're all racists. But if you look at the Ruckshan's footage, and Ruckshan himself, here's all these different races marching, and they're all fascists. And so they're the most scruffiest looking fascists you've ever seen. I mean, because they're all in their tracky decks and puppet jackets. I mean, it's just outrageous. It's just outrageous.
Well, could I say, I'll just say, just make up one little summary, because I've been sitting on this, because it really seems like we're still playing out the battle of the 20th century. Because really, anyone that opposes, well, that's right, and anyone that opposes what's happening now, which is globalism, which is communism, basically, is branded as fascist. We have to be branded a fascist. Yeah, we have to be branded a fascist because we're standing against it. And it's fine for everyone to complain when we're now being censored. But when Donald Trump was censored, everyone just sort of, well, you know, serves his right and stuff like that. But basically, he was a strong sense of nationalism. I don't think he was a fascist, but they certainly would have branded him as a fascist because he may have stood weakly, incompletely, however he did, but he stood against globalism. He stood against global communism. So he has to be branded a fascist, just like we will continue to be branded a fascist because we are standing against global communism. And that's... And I don't want to be an advocate of Hitler either, but that's exactly what Hitler was confronting when he watched the Bolshevik Revolution happen in the East, in the Soviet Union, and their design was to take over the world. That's what it was about. It was about international communism, one world government. And he stood against it, however imperfectly, and was a fascist. And we'll be fascists as well. Anyone that stands against the narrative will be branded a racist fascist. Get used to it, because that's what they were. Because they know it works.
And the only way to fight that is to actually be articulate, be yourself, so that hopefully enough people see that it's bullshit. So I'm going to wrap up. David, do you want to have a final say? And then I'll finish my final say. I'll let Tania have the final say for the night. Just before you go, though, I think free speech and defending free speech is really one of the trenches where we have to fight for. We cannot give up free speech, because once we have, then we're really finished. But David, yourself.
Well, free speech, part and parcel with freedom. So this bill is all about that. It's all about the freedom. These have all been satellite points or subsidiary points or whatever, extensions of the bigger fight, the bigger argument, the points Damien brought up, and the name calling, the fascism, the labeling, so it's been an attack. They've been chipping away at us on many levels, distracting us, villainizing, and the rest of it, and having everybody fighting, creating mass division amongst everybody. Now it really comes down to this: those of us who want to be free and those of us who don't want to be free, and what we're prepared to do and what kind of a stand we want to take, we want to make, because we're at the crossroads now, we're at the precipice. And as I said, all of those things are extensions and come with it, the language, and it's part of, they're great things to attack and they're great arguments to have, but we shouldn't give these people too much credit and get on their level and spend so much time defending ourselves and defending what we're not, and really turning the table and exposing them for what they are, because there's not much intelligence there. There's not much going on there. The lights are on, but nobody's there. And if we just shine the light back on them, I think that maybe they can pull the rug from under themselves, and it can implode. That's really the only chance, without it getting violent because nobody wants things to get violent. And they're always the side that are quick to go to violence. Those that, those that dehumanize first. We've dehumanized the Jews. We've dehumanized Aborigines. We dehumanize minorities. We create an enemy, a target. We make them the focus of everything because they're easy to wrangle. It's easy to wrangle certain communities. So now it's us. Now where it's easy to call somebody a fascist now because it's easy. There's no defamation. You can just throw the word around. Fascist, 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 fascist.
Yeah.
So you get away with dehumanize us by calling us all fascists, as they did with Trump supporters, Hillary Clinton and her deplorables, which backfired on her. So dehumanize us because it's then easy to march us into the camps. It was easy to march Jews in the camps because they were evil, and it's easy to march fascists like us into the camps now because we're also evil. So if we can't see the setup and we can't start calling that out and attacking that and fighting back on that level, then what do we expect? We're going to let dumb goons, thugs, the same as Nazis, and those the Communist Chinese Party who have those implying the same regime over there do the same to us here. This is a time to choose, guys. Unfortunately, it's inconvenient. I understand. We're all doing something else before this came along, but you've got no choice. This is it. This is the time. If not now, then never. So that's me.
That's right.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you. Tania. And Tania, I'll get you to introduce your song, which I've got all set up, and we'll finish with your song.
Okay. No, thank you. Yeah, look, I think the most important thing is for all of us to speak truth to power and not be afraid to do so, to keep shining the light of truth into the evil and the darkness, to transform it, to really move from this sort of material plane where there's a lot of noise and go into a higher plane so that you can get more of a bird's eye view of the bigger picture and the whole. And we have to also believe in hope and believe that love will win. I think that's really important. It's really easy to be scared to hear some of these scenarios. And even as I've been listening to this conversation, I've been going, oh shit, and I've heard stuff before. It's still frightening to hear it. And I don't think that it's I think it's important to be awake and aware. On the other hand, I think we can't get too fatalistic. We actually have to believe there's a chance that we can win and that we must never give up the fight. And so I guess I just want to give hope and just say there needs to be, from all of your hearts that are listening and all the beautiful hearts of beautiful people on this program, these are great people. I think for the other people who are not awake, it's just they're not awake. They're not necessarily bad people. It's just they've lost contact with their hearts, really, and that's sad. And we need to try and help them connect back to their hearts. So with that, I will introduce this piece, which is a beautiful video.
Could I say just on that point, just before you do,
yes.
Tania, just on that point of hope, and I think it's worth saying is because Tammy Jane, one of our colleagues, put it in the comments down there. Tomorrow, there will be a vigil beginning at the steps of Parliament House. There's a vigil beginning for those people who want to resist this bill being enacted is beginning tomorrow on the steps of Parliament House. So
I think it's going to be.
How long is that going for? Oh,
I think they're going to be sleeping over. They intend to make it like 24/7 in the as they coming up to and they're just trying to reach into the Labor politicians' souls and say, listen, please don't give away our democracy. So I'd love to be there, but I'm like that monkey from our practice mode.
Well, Michael, if you can let me know, sometimes I might try and go there.
I'd say it'd probably go from about 10 o'clock and it'll probably go right the way through to, that's what it's going to be, like an encampment.
It's going to be a vigil.
Encampment
there. All night. I think it's going. I think it's going all night.
Probably start at 10 a.m. in the morning, and it'll just go all night.
The idea is to have so many of us there in the morning that they can't get into Parliament. Not that we're physically going to do anything to stop them, that there would just be so many of us there that they can't physically enter.
We need all our skills. We need to deploy all our skills at the moment. Love, strength. We need our fighters. We need our compassion. The best of all of us, because Some are great. We're all good at something. We're all remarkable at something. And that's what this threatens, because we're all great at something, and we just need to let that, we need to roll with that. We need to tap into our best, no matter who it is. The other side, we're all, at the end of the day, we've all got ability. We all have a talent. We all have something to contribute, you know. So wake up, you know, it doesn't have to be this bad. It doesn't have to be us and them. It's not a competition. The only competition should be to have a good life, to be able to look in the mirror. The competition is with you, you know. Can I handle looking at myself in the mirror? That's it. You know, just wake up to that.
Yes.
Sorry.
So no, that's okay. So this video is a beautiful psychedelic video, really, that just shows the beauty of humans and also their fragility. And I think we need to remember that all of us on both sides of this debate are actually fragile. And I think probably we're all just looking for greater love, and we need to raise our consciousness to appreciate the opportunity that potentially this is. And so this is my voice. It's based on Foray's Pavan, and I hope that all of you enjoy it.
Okay, let's go. Thank you.
Thanks, David. Thanks, guys. Thanks, Michael.
Thank you for coming on, guys. I'm just going to put out a call too. All the people that are calling us fascists and racists, if one of you would actually like to come on and educate us to how we are fascists, we'd be very interested to have you on, because we're a little confused. So the door's open to come on and have that conversation.
In good faith too. We'll have it in good faith.
Yeah, have it in good faith. We'd really like to know, because there seems to be a great divide, and you guys seem to be completely committed that we're racist and fascist. So please open our eyes, and maybe you can show us the error of our ways. Okay, good night, everybody. Here we go.